My name's Clint, and I've always held the opinion that ghosts don't exist. Witches and vampires and mythical creatures were just characters in stories. That all changed when I met Sienna. I remember that day very vividly. It was the third week of high school. She came in all shy and quiet as the teacher walked her into the classroom. It was a bit late for someone to be transferring, I remember thinking. But boy, did I have a huge crush on her as soon as I saw her. She was beautiful. She looked down the whole time, but when she looked up at the class for the very first time, we locked eyes, and I was immediately drawn to her. I felt like she was my soulmate. She took the only other free seat in the room, and it was right behind me. All I could think of that day was how I could come up with an excuse to talk to her, and I was really blanking on it. Later that morning, I felt a chill go up my spine. It spread all over me like a tremor. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I felt the room grow cold. I looked around, but everyone seemed oblivious. They were all furiously writing down notes. I looked behind me, and I kid you not, I let out a tiny squeal and jumped up from my seat, because I didn't expect Sienna to be staring right at me. She blushed, and then she looked away. I said hi, but she seemed not to hear. And so, for almost 4 years, I silently pined for her. I kept wishing and wishing that I'd come up with a way to interact with her, but I never saw her outside of the classroom. I never even ran into her outside of school. Sometimes I'd stand around by the lockers just waiting for the chance to bump into her, but it never happened. She seemed to always go home first, and she was always the first one there in the morning. But one day, just as our prom theme was announced, fate smiled down on me. We were paired to do a class presentation for history together. I was over the moon. I walked up to her, and after years of being hopeless, I offered her my hand to shake and said hello. She blushed, and she turned away but took my hand, and in the tiniest of voices she spoke to me. "Hi, I'm Sienna. Nice to meet you." I wanted to blurt out how excited I was to finally speak to her. Instead, I played it cool by sitting down next to her and quickly falling off the floor, because I miscalculated the fact that there wasn't a seat there. That made her giggle and blush, and I was in heaven. We met up in the weekend to work on our project, and she came to my house. I personally cleaned everything the day before. I stayed up till after midnight just to make sure everything in the house was spotless. Not a single speck of dust was left. And when she did come the next day, I introduced her to my mom and dad. They saw how excited I was about coming over, so they laid the teasing extremely heavily. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Sienna." "Yeah, you're all he's been talking about these past few years, and I'm glad he's finally manned up and talked to you." "Oh, my God, Mom, Dad, stop! Please, go away!" I was pushing them out of the living room, but my mom couldn't resist but shout before I got rid of them. "You know my son's single! Can you believe that? He's been single since birth!" I closed my eyes and wished on every star, every god, and every goddess to make the ground swallow me whole. I was so embarrassed. I made my way back to Sienna, and all I could do was laugh awkwardly and pretend like none of that happened. She laughed. A genuine loud laugh. She had always been so quiet that it took me by surprise. "Well, that was mortifying. For you, I mean." That was the beginning of our friendship. We brainstormed most of the day, and we just couldn't come up with any great concept to show off our town's history. Until suddenly, Sienna stood up. "Of course!" "Of course? What's the one story we all grew up hearing about?" I racked my brain for the answer. And then it all clicked in my head, and I knew exactly what she meant. "The Ghost of Uniondale!" "Exactly. I'll ask my mom for a ride. You game?" "I'm game for anything. But where are we going?" "Where else?" The hotel was eerie. It just screamed haunted, even in broad daylight. Windows were shattered and the roof seemed ready to collapse. I thought we were just there to record a few videos and tell the story of the Ghost of Uniondale. Every significant event in our small town was tied to her story. I still get chills when I remember the nightmare those stories used to give me as a kid. But I knew ghosts didn't exist. Still, the vibe of the hotel was enough to give me goosebumps. Sienna hauled an entire box of things as we went into the place. I helped carry most of it, but she brought so much stuff I couldn't imagine why we would need them. Until I saw her unpack all of it. What's all this stuff? Oh, just random stuff I picked up here and there. It's supposed to help you communicate with the spirits. And then she took out a Ouija board, night vision goggles, some candles, a flashlight, and a blanket and pillows. Suddenly, I didn't like where things were going. When I envisioned my first date with Sienna, I never thought it would involve sleeping in an abandoned hotel in the middle of nowhere while we hunted ghosts. But that was exactly what happened. It was just lucky that her mom made us lunches, some dinner, and even several packs of chips. I could tell Sienna was hyped about the whole thing, so I just went along for the ride. We spent the whole day watching videos on my laptop and laughing at memes. I had never seen her so alive, so joyful. We decided to take a nap so we would have energy to film during the night. She slept on the couch while I slept on the floor. But before we closed our eyes, she leaned over to me and planted a kiss on my cheek. Thank you for this. I went to heaven in that moment. The sky opened up and angels were singing. I fell asleep thinking about her. It must have been way past midnight because when I woke up, it was freezing, and the only light coming in was the light of the full moon. There was heavy fog, and I heard an owl calling in the distance. My laptop had since run out of battery, and so did my phone. And when I looked over to the couch, Sienna was nowhere to be seen. Sienna? Sienna, where are you? My heart began to pound when there was no reply. Where did she go? Did she get lost? Did she start the ghost hunt without me? I put on my jacket and took the flashlight with me. I scoured the creepy long corridors, but she didn't materialize. And then I heard a sound coming from the kitchens. My heart pounded even harder. I had never been that creeped out before. It's not funny, Sienna! Come out! There was a very evident quiver of fear in my voice. I tiptoed to the kitchen, fully expecting her to jump out and scare me for the sake of a laugh. But when I rounded the corner, I saw an empty, abandoned kitchen. I breathed a sigh of relief. And then, bang! Clang! Crash! I jumped so fast, it felt like my soul left my body for a second. I turned to the source of the noise and saw a black cat. It had tipped over a pile of old pots. Once it saw me, it bounded off and out of one of the broken windows. I finally realized I was being dumb for being scared. It was just an abandoned building. Ghosts aren't real. I trudged back to the lobby and plopped down beside our things. If she wasn't going to come out, I was going to wait it out. She was bound to get tired of hiding at some point. I saw the Ouija board and decided to see what all the fuss was about. But the moment I touched it, the pointer started moving around rapidly. I tell you, the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I was so scared. I wanted to run out of there, but I couldn't move a muscle. And then there was a burst of light, and Sienna was in front of me, smiling and glowing. She was all in white. A bride. I've been waiting for you, my groom. I ran out of there like my life depended on it. I didn't care about my laptop or my phone. I couldn't sleep that night. Not for 3 whole nights that I started getting dark circles around my eyes. And then one night, I woke up, and she was there, in my house, just staring at me. You look just like him. Please, don't hurt me. Sienna giggled. Why would I do that? I just want to get married. The story was that the ghost of Uniondale was about to get married, but she never made it to her own wedding. Her groom waited for his whole life until he grew too old and was gone himself. Sienna had been roaming our town ever since looking for his groom. but they were never able to find each other. She just wanted to move on, and for that to happen, she wanted something she had always dreamed of. To get married to her fiancé. And I looked exactly like him. I got my friend to help me. She married us in my backyard in the middle of the night, and when it was finished, she smiled at me. "Thank you." She leaned in, took my hands, and kissed me on the lips, and I felt her, like she was alive. There was a flash of light, and she was gone, and in my hands was a golden coin. When my parents left me the house, I cleaned out the attic to renovate, and under a pile of books I found an old black and white photo. In it was a man who looked just like me, and beside him was Sienna.